Joining us like she does all season long, host of the Mina Kimes show featuring Lenny ESPN, NFL analyst, friend of the program, Mina Kimes. And Mina, the last time we spoke, I feel like, the narratives around Marvin Harrison Jr. just a little bit different than what has gone down over the last couple of weeks. What, in your opinion, has changed or maybe not changed?
I don't think anything really changed. I'm pretty glad I opted out of the 20-mile-per-hour panic discourse of week one. Not to pat my own back there, but I think generally with rookies, we can do more than a one-game sample size. Obviously, since then, you had the massive breakout game. Then last week, a bit of a step back for the offense overall, which we can talk about. But Harrison Jr. certainly looks as advertised.
Benjamin Solak and yourself, self-proclaimed run the ball guys. I saw that. Of course, make sure you're following Mina on Twitter, checking out the show. But Cardinals didn't run the ball very well, kind of uncharacteristically against the Lions defense. Made him a bit one-dimensional there. The Marv, 11 targets, just 5 catches. Was that a product of maybe not being able to get it going on the ground? Or, is it that simple in your opinion?
It's been a little bit puzzling all year, actually. I would say the Cardinals' run game has not looked as good as it did in the second half of last season. And that's something I've been waiting for. And it goes beyond just one game. Although I will say the Lions' run defense, I believe, is one of the best in the NFL. I actually think statistically they did finish as the best in the NFL last year. And I think they've actually only gotten better. So I think they're going to limit a lot of teams on the ground. But yeah, not being able to run the ball the way Arizona wants to, the way I think Drew Petzing in particular really wants to, is definitely affecting the entire offense, putting them in difficult third down situations. I know they struggled a lot in third down against, a pretty stifling Detroit man defense last week. And I think that's going to be fundamental to whether or not this offense can get back on track is, can they run the ball the way they were built to run the ball, the way we've seen them run the ball? And until they do so, I think there's going to be ups and downs.
An argument can be made. Kyler Murray last week against the LA Rams played one of the best games by any quarterback in the NFL. And then I think a lot of us assume this week against Detroit, pick up where he left off. And it's disappointing, I know, for Cardinal fans, because you get a really high-end defensive performance where you hold Detroit to just 20 points, right? And they look relatively average, does the Lions in the second half. But Kyler in the offense just can't muster up enough points. What do you need to see from K1 to get that more consistency? Is it as simple as, well, he has to have a run game, or at some point, some of these connections with MHJ and some of the other receivers, we need more consistency in the passing game?
Yeah, he was inconsistent this week. And I think the reason why that's sort of amplified in the pass game is when they aren't running the ball, they aren't getting the defensive looks that they want to, that should spring from that. But also the passing game feels a little tight right now. I really like Marvin Harrison Jr. a lot, and I think he's only going to get better at getting open. But right now, you're not really seeing a ton of separation across the board. And again, that's not to exonerate Kyler, because I think he is also missing some throws when they're facing man coverage. But I also think they're not getting sort of the layups that you'd like to see that will make this offense a little bit more consistent. Makes sense. They're still figuring it out. I guess I'm not hitting the panic button, or just in the way that after, beating the Rams, I wasn't saying, well, this offense is going to be the best in the NFL and Kyler Murray MVP. I'm also not hitting the panic button after a little bit of a step back against a much better defense in Detroit, because I kind of figured that there would be some ups and downs. And I know that might be a little bit disappointing for Cardinals fans, coming off of last season and Kyler's more removed from injury. But this is still a pretty, I would say, uneven group of skill players. I thought Wilson was good in this one, but there aren't a lot of really experienced vets, right, amongst the receivers and tight ends. And I think sometimes that's going to show up in these games.
Well, with the 3-week sample size, in your opinion, what do you believe is who's the consistency as far as this offense, and maybe be more like the Rams offense than maybe the team against the Lions? Who can lead that charge? Is it Petzing from a play calling standpoint? Is it Kyler? Is it his playmakers? Is it the run game?
It's going to need to be Kyler because of the youth of the skill players. And I think McBride, you're going to get, hopefully he's healthy, he's going to get some consistency from him, particularly as the year goes along. But I think because you're talking about a young group and because of the nature of this offense that does want to be run first, you need the quarterback when you do get those opportunities, the one-on-ones, the explosives, to hit them with more consistency. And, I'm a huge Murray fan, if that's not obvious from our conversations, but I think that's what you want to see from him as the year goes along is, when you're able to get those opportunities because you're facing more, stacked boxes, single high coverage, base defense, that kind of thing. Can you routinely make those throws? And I think you don't want to be, against the Rams team, it felt like everything was working, but they were really hitting on those explosives, and that's great. But and we talked about, sort of Kyler's deep ball getting back, but I think what you want to see from him is consistency in that intermediate passing game, particularly again, when they use play action and when they're able to get defenses the way they want them.
Mina, the Seahawks notwithstanding, and we can argue like the quality of their wins, and they are undefeated. Bo and I were joking before the show. Bo mentioned, do they have Florida State next on their schedule? It very much feels like the Seattle Seahawks,
right.
they're gonna be viable, right?
We'll learn a lot this week, by the way. They got the Lions, so yeah.
That's right. But have the other teams in this division opened the door, granted, even though Arizona's wanted to allow the Cardinals to be viable long-term this year? Like, they've already beaten the Rams. They have the Niners right around the corner, who are not themselves. Like, that can't be disputed. They don't have their players. They look like the prolonged playoff appearances are finally taking a toll. Like, do you feel differently about this Cardinal team than maybe you did 3 weeks ago, given the landscape of the NFC West?
I would say I feel the same. That's not true, actually. The Cardinals defense has been better than I thought. That was actually, like you guys touched on at the top, I thought this defense would be a train wreck. Train wreck's strong, but I thought they would be one of the worst in the NFL. And I was really impressed by the performance last week. There have been guys who I did not have high expectations for coming into this season who have really impressed me. I think the last time we spoke, I mentioned Zaven Collins week 1. Zaven Collins week 3, man, like that guy continues to show up. I think that contract is going to look better and better once they start figuring out his natural skills as a pass rusher. It really unleashed him. Gardeck was good in this one. He's kind of one of those NFL players who's always quietly good and been that way for a long time. Obviously, the safeties are good as well. So, if you're getting average defensive play, if the offense hits its ceiling, that's absolutely a team that should be in the mix for the playoffs. But what I was going to say is it's less so that my opinion about the Cardinals has changed and more that the NFC West feels open because of the injury bug hitting San Francisco and LA the way they has, just undeniably. And we're talking serious long-term injuries to both of those teams. That to me makes this thing feel pretty wide open.
Yeah, vintage Budda Baker in week 2. It was great to see him going into a contract year. And then, as you mentioned, Gardeck has just been playing out of his mind. 3 sacks, TFLs are through the roof. I think tied for first in the NFL. So the defense certainly surprising. Up next, I'm sure a lot of the talking points today, Jayden Daniels, the Commanders offense.
Suddenly a hot matchup.
That's right. Once our Cliff, now somebody else's Cliff coming to town. What do you make of this Washington offense? Is it for real?
I think Jayden Daniels is for real. I've been on the record as being very critical of Cliff Kingsbury, and
we're guilty of that too.
Anything back here. This is a safe space.
Commanders fans are doing well. Don't put this on social because Commanders fans will be mad at me or whatever. I'm sorry, but I'm not going to praise Cliff Kingsbury when Jayden Daniels throws a gorgeous go ball with a guy bearing down on his face. That's the quarterback and Terry McLaurin. I don't think there's anything schematically that's really been that impressive to me. Frankly, the quarterback has been impressive. The quarterback was impressive last night, granted against a very bad Bengals defense, but he's a problem, man. I would be concerned about that side of the ball because of what his accuracy, his decision-making. Last night in particular, I was really impressed by what he did throwing on the run, which was not something I thought was really in his bag. And there's some interesting similarity. I mean, him and Kyler are very different. I think their skills, their strengths and weaknesses are different, but they're both explosive runners, obviously built very differently. It's going to be a lot of fun. I think it's going to be high scoring because, again, what you saw last night, as fun as that Washington Commanders offense is, that defense is not good. Detroit is much better. So you really want to see a bounce back game for Arizona. And there's a real opportunity here to run the football better than they have thus far this season. Cincinnati had some success. That's an inferior rushing attack to Arizona. So I think there's a good chance here to get back on track, try to control the game on offense. and take advantage of some of the weaknesses on that side of the ball.
I mean, quickly, I want to do the thing you're not supposed to do 3 weeks into somebody's NFL career, but I'm going to ask you, who's been more impressive in your opinion, Malik Neighbors or Marvin Harrison Jr., given the very small sample size that you've seen?
I mean, I think the Neighbors has had a better start. I'm not saying he's going to be I was Marv 1, and I'm not certainly not saying that I've changed my mind. I think and Neighbors has been awesome, like he's been so explosive, but I think what's really impressed me is the physicality that he's played with. Weirdly, this is going to sound like a damning with faint praise, but I think because of the inaccurate quarterback play, he's going to have more highlight. You saw this with OBJ at the end of his career too. Like sometimes when a really, really good wide receiver plays with a mid or bad quarterback, they actually end up getting more big moments because of that in a funny way. The offense is absolutely running through him as it should. But like the class looks really good. Odunze obviously hasn't had the start you'd want. Some of that is injury related. Thomas Jr., the quarterback play hasn't quite been there. But I still really, really love this group of receivers, McConkey. And I think, though, you see why both Harrison Jr. and Neighbors were picked where they were.
I mean, you said that this is an opportunity for the run game to get back on track against the Washington defense. You forecasted last time you were on the show that the Rams, you're going to be able to work the perimeter a little bit better, and man, did they, with 130 yards and 2 touchdowns to Marvin Harrison Jr. What do you forecast this week, especially with that Kyler MHH connection?
Give me James Conner going off in this one. It's been so limiting for him, and it's been frustrating because I think he's such a good back, and obviously the injuries on the offensive line haven't helped. But this is a real opportunity, guys, particularly on the perimeter. I think against this Washington defense, I think you can really run the ball, get those big tight ends moving in space. I really like both McBride and Harrison Jr. in this one. I like offense in this one. I really do. But for me, the focus is that run game, just because my vision for what this Cardinals offense can be is really predicated on continuing to have a dominant rushing attack. And I think there's a real opportunity here against Washington too. So
we're excited for it. We're always excited when Mina Kimes joins the program. Make sure you're checking out the podcast, The Mina Kimes Show, featuring Lenny. We love that you've got Benjamin Solak in the fold as well. He's always been doing such great work no matter where he is, now with you at ESPN. Mina, as always, thank you so much for your time. Looking forward to the next time we catch up.
Thanks for having me, guys.
We all silly like the mayor.